Murder, She Wrote is a crime drama television series that ran from 1984 to 1996. It starred the late Angela Lansbury as Jessica Fletcher, an amateur sleuth living in a cozy town named Cabot Cove. The show combines its usual snug setting with whodunit cases, and occasionally dabbles into unexpected genres. Hence, the subject of today's review, The Legacy of Borbey House, one of the series' more gothic, eerie entries. The episode's tone and setting evokes classic vampire stories, foggy mansions, ominous strangers, and hints of the undead. Makes sense why I'm making this review, doesn't it? Anyways, are the allegations of vampirism simply village gossip, or is there something far darker lurking around? Let's find out. Without further ado, on with the review. The episode begins with a couple in a graveyard. What about respect for the dead, eh? They notice that one of the tombs has been opened, and we get some Oscar-worthy performances from the pair.
I mean, this was a really lousy idea.
I told you, there's nothing to be scared of.
We get a shot of the moon, and a hand rises from the open grave, as the couple run for the hills. Take note of this nerdy guy though, he'll show up again later. Given the era of television that this came out in, and the fact that both are heavily inspired by vampire films, this episode shares quite a bit in common with the subject of the last review. We cut to Jessica and her contractor Charles looking for tape while renovating her house, but Charles finds a note from his late fiancée, Laurel, among his tools. Charles leaves to go fix up another client's house, and Jessica's friend, Dr. Seth Hazlitt, drops by and describes the shenanigans in the cemetery from the previous night. We then see a young girl named Molly head to an old house, where she is greeted by the butler, Mr. Yatich. She attempts to show the owner of the house, Lawrence Baker, her father's plans for renovating it, and she is left alone in the room with him, with the doors closed. I guess this is on purpose since it's a vampire story, but that's a bit creepy. Also, this is probably a reference to when Jonathan Harker visits Dracula to sell him a house in London. The house in question is a Victorian home that every town seems to have, the titular Borbey House. While at the library, Jessica and Seth bump into the nerdy guy from earlier, Dr. Sorensen, who is definitely not a walking caricature.
What I hope will be my almost magnum opus. Middle European supernatural phenomenon in New England.
Well, that explains why he was lying in a grave earlier. Research, I guess. In the next scene, we see Molly quarrelling with her on and off boyfriend Dave, as he's been understandably down since his sister went missing a year and a half ago. The same Laurel who was supposed to marry Charles. I will say that Molly is quite insensitive here. No wonder their relationship is strained.
I don't blame you for wondering or trying. But this isn't about money. It's about moving on with our lives.
Are you serious right now, bro?
Jessica's other friend, Sheriff Metzger, because Jessica knows literally everyone in the series, arrives and has an exchange with Dave about how his PI leads are eating into the police force's resources. Dave goes to the Borbey house to confront Lawrence, and he gets kicked out just as Molly arrives. Why is she so enthralled by this guy? Vampire hypnotism, I guess. Maybe it's the shades. That night, the kids from earlier come across what looks like a body, but the sheriff discovers the next morning that it's just part of a mannequin. Easy mistake to make, it was dark out. Anyways, Lawrence starts demanding more extreme renovations from Charles, taking away his time from other customers like Jessica. This old lady, Mrs. Higgins, tells the sheriff that she saw someone digging up graves. When he goes to investigate, he finds cloves of garlic on the grave belonging to William Borbey. Spooky. Molly's dad, Mr. Holt, has a confrontation with Lawrence at his shop in front of Jessica about the amount of time he's been spending with Molly, and Mr. Holt reveals that a credit check he ran on Lawrence brought back no data. He also apparently paid for the Borbey house in cash. Well, that's not suspicious at all. Even outside of supernatural explanations, the dude is still creepy.
Clock that T. Clock it. Clock that T. Clock it. Clock that T.
While he's snooping around Borbey House, Dr. Sorensen is caught by Lawrence, and the kooky doctor immediately pulls out a crucifix and starts covering his neck. We then get a shot of the ocean. What is this, Dark Shadows? Anyway, our heroes find Lawrence Baker with a stake through his heart. Oh no! I wonder who the culprit could be. Well, Mr. Yattage admits he wasn't the biggest fan of his late employer, but insists that he's innocent. Dr. Sorensen also claims to have been in his room all night, which we know is a lie.
That vampires can only be killed with a stake that is made of ash wood.
Oh, that is absolutely correct, Mrs. Fletcher. Why?
Because the stake in Lawrence Baker's heart was fur.
I like how he looks like, damn, I can't believe I missed that. Rookie mistake. Nevertheless, Sorensen tells the sheriff and Jessica that he found William Borbey's grave empty when he checked it, and that following his apparent death, there was a string of strange incidents involving puncture wounds and a loss of blood. Despite her skepticism, Jessica does find the whole thing suspicious. They come across Dave, and she notices something in a photo of the boat that Laurel went missing on. Apparently, Mr. Yattage could also be a former secret police officer, and while confronting him, Jessica finds more evidence as to who the culprit is. Wait, Charles? To make a long story short, Charles had already been working on Borbey House for a while. Laurel and Charles had an argument 18 months before the beginning of the episode, where Laurel broke up with him, and Charles killed her in a rage before building a wall around her, hoping no one would find her. Lawrence wanted Charles to remove the wall, so he killed him vampire style, hoping this would be enough to frame Sorensen. So, you may be asking, where are the canonical vampires? At some kind of dinner party following Charles's arrest, the librarian produces a very familiar looking photograph of William Borbey. Well, what did I think of the Legacy of Borbey House overall? I thought it was really fun, and I actually preferred it to the Diagnosis Murder Vampire episode. It has a pretty standard television episode narrative structure, so you'll know what to expect if you're familiar with Murder, She Wrote. The character dynamics were interesting too, and I like how Jessica and her friends didn't jump to the conclusion that Sorensen was guilty despite him being the obvious suspect. I like how the sheriff was more inclined to believe the vampire theory, Seth was heavily skeptical, and while Jessica was able to come up with a rational explanation, she kept an open mind. Baker was pretty creepy too. Mr. Holt was in the right there. The vampire tropes were also present but weren't ham-fisted or superficial. I mean, we had the garlic and steaks, but also had more subtle signs of vampire manipulation. The moon panel wasn't continuously used either. So, to sum things up, The Legacy of Borbey House is a fun, solid mystery, with just the right mix of vampirism and crime drama. Although this episode's conclusion is quite dark, I think it walks the line between spooky and light-hearted without feeling overdone. Well, that's all for this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.
Spooky for you. Spooky for you. Do up,